We're here for the weekly episode of Team Counterculture Discussions. Today we're talking about some of our favorite disturbing albums. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachman, Ann Coulter, Megyn Kelly, Marjorie Green, Lauren Boebert, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Paris Hilton, Alex Trebek, Pat Sajak, Vanna White, Ken Jennings, James Holzhauer, Brad Rutter, Anne Frank, Mindy McCready, Greta Thunberg, Ponyboy Curtis, Soda Pop Curtis, Derry Curtis, Steve Randall, Two-Bit Matthews, Dally Winston, Johnny Cade, Phileas Fogg, Megan Phelps Roper, Ellen Ripley, Jeanette McCurdy, Miranda Cosgrove, and Archie Bunker. Anyway, let's get started. Alex, would you like to start us off?
Sure, Laura. For me, this was both easy and hard at the same time because I listened to a lot of death metal. I had plenty of options, sure, but it was hard to narrow them down. I was originally going to go with Mental Funeral by Autopsy, since it's my favorite death metal album of all time. But then I remembered that I listed it in our last discussion. So I went with Severed Survival by Autopsy instead. This is their first album released in 1989. While I won't say it's better than Mental Funeral, I will say it's more disturbing due to raw production. It's death metal, so of course it's going to sound a bit scary, but the addition of doom metal elements gives it this musty, decayed sound that brings to mind a long, abandoned serial killer's lair, especially with the gore-themed lyrics. Also, I know this is unrelated to the music, but this album cover may be the most disgusting thing I've seen in death metal.
Most disgusting thing you've seen in death metal, huh? Bold statement, but I can see it. My album cover isn't nearly as disturbing, though if you're a prude, it might be. I'm talking about No Love Deep Web by Death Grips, otherwise known as the album with the giant dick on the cover. I could have gone with anything by Death Grips because not only are they consistently great, they're consistently disturbing. This whole album is pure paranoia, darkness, and nihilism. I don't mean the optimistic nihilism that Ilhan and Pat believe in. I mean stereotypical nihilism. The beats are abrasive, heavy, and at times scary. If you're wondering why I picked this over any other Death Grips album, it's because I was having a hard time deciding which one to pick. And then Alex described his album as having the most disgusting album cover. So I went with the one that most enabled me to make fun of people who think sex is more disgusting than gore. In other words, I picked this album over The Money Store so I could make a dick joke. I'm not sorry about it either.
You do realize that The Money Store has some kind of weird fetish portrayed on its cover, right?
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's got a hot girl walking a guy in a dog mask with a leash. That's a weird BDSM thing.
What the fuck? I'm looking up the album cover right now. Holy shit. You're right. However, I think I'll stick with No Love Deep Web, because that's subtle and obscure enough that I don't think most prudish people would get it.
Fair enough.
My stone wall is all dog gaze, duct tape to the ceiling, stuck okay. Make me alien. Okay, feel me, I'm in an 800 abandoned building. No.
Okay, my pick is one I discovered thanks to our fellow YouTuber, Wyatt X Him. It's Crystal Knocked by John Zorn. This guy is an avant-garde jazz musician who made this album to explore his Jewish heritage a bit. Specifically, if the album cover and title didn't make it obvious enough, this album is about the Holocaust. However, instead of describing it lyrically the way most artists would, John Zorn uses soundscapes and clips of Hitler speeches to make you feel like you're actually there as this is happening. That would be disturbing enough. But the fact that the second song is an 11-minute noise piece that sounds like glass breaking just adds to it. It's one of the most simultaneously heartbreaking and disturbing things I've ever listened to, but it's also one of the most powerful. Though I don't think most people will enjoy it, I do think everyone should listen to it because of how important its message is.
Wow, that escalated quickly. We went from sex jokes to the Holocaust?
remind me to never listen to Kristallnacht by John Zorn. Anyway, my pick is The Drowning by Controlled Bleeding. Noise as a genre is incredibly unsettling for me, and I have to be in a very specific mood to listen to it. However, when the mood strikes, Controlled Bleeding is one of my favourite acts to listen to, mainly because they're one of the more creative acts in the genre. My reason for picking The Drowning in particular, though, is that the way this album goes from abrasive noise to bouncy industrial rock to calm yet creepy ambient really puts me on edge. I never know what it's going to do. This album and genre are definitely not for the faint of heart, even compared to industrial hip-hop or death metal, but if you can get into it, you'll find that there are some gems in this genre. This is one of them.
You know, the only noise album I've listened to is Hole in the Heart by Ramley. I really enjoyed that album. Maybe I should listen to that Controlled Bleeding album next?
No, it's a bit too intense for beginners. If you want some other beginner noise albums, check out Going Places by Yellow Swans and Frozen Niagara Falls by Prurient.
Okay, I'll check them out. Anyway, for my disturbing album, I'll go with Dog Days of the Holocaust by Hollow Earth. This is a dark, ambient album with an atmosphere that makes me feel like I'm walking through a concentration camp during a snowstorm. The title and cover art are definitely fitting. If that wasn't disturbing enough, just look at some of these song titles. Floor of Hell, Scrawled in Blood, and, my personal favorite, Rape Machine all sound like good horror movie titles. It may not be as visceral as Anne without the E's pick, but it's still more than a bit chilling.
Wow, is this video trying to give me flashbacks? Kristallnacht and Dog Days of the Holocaust? I'm glad I smoked some weed before we started filming.
If it gets to be too much, you can step out.
Thanks, Archie.
My turn now, and since Archie stole my number one pick, I'll go with Syoma by Halo Monash. Like Dog Days of the Holocaust, this is a dark ambient album. Unlike Dog Days of the Holocaust, this falls into the subgenre of ritual ambient. Basically, it's dark ambient with tribal elements designed to make the listener feel like they're being attacked by some evil cult. This album in particular sounds like some space cult is planning to blow up the Earth. The use of bells, chimes, and tribal percussion makes this album downright horrifying, like the soundtrack to a cosmic horror movie. The one reason I don't find this quite as disturbing as Dog Days of the Holocaust is the backstory behind it. This album is, according to Halo Monash themselves, dedicated to and inspired by the dynamic subconscious force that gives impulsive visions of auto-cannibalism and metempsychosis. That may be the goofiest thing I've ever heard. Still, the album itself is brilliant.
Funnily enough, that was my second pick, too.
I was expecting you to pick it, considering you gave it to Ilhan for her birthday last week.
Thanks for that, by the way.
No problem, Ilhan.
When it comes to disturbing albums, I was torn between two picks, those being the self-titled album by This Heat and the album I ended up going with, To Be Kind by Swans. Both are great experimental rock albums, but To Be Kind is just so eerie in its sound that I actively get goosebumps while listening to it. It's what happens when you take the atmosphere and weird song structures of post-rock and make it dark and abrasive instead of comforting. It's unique, and I can see why this band gets so much critical acclaim. The creeping bass lines in particular send chills down my spine.
Love, child, reach, rise, side, blind, steal, light, mind, scar.
You can't get 36 music nerds to talk about music without at least one Rate Your Music or Mucore pick popping up, can you? Anyway, my pick is Death Wish by Crucifix Clan. These guys are a Memphis rap group, and they make some great songs about murder. Shout out to Vanna and Jamal for introducing me to this shit, by the way. Any album from this genre could fit because they're all quite dark. but I went with this one because even ignoring the disturbing content, these guys kick ass. The flows, the beats, and the rhyme schemes all go hard with these guys. If I had one complaint, it would be that songs like I'm a Hound make me think these guys should never talk about sex. Ever. Seriously, I'm a freak to my bones, but these lyrics make me feel icky.
I just looked up the lyrics to that song, and wow, I'm never having sex again. Next time I see Edith, I'll have to tell her I'm going celibate.
Don't worry. Here's some wholesome memes.
Much better. Thanks for getting rid of whatever that was.
If we're done stealing memes off of Reddit, it's my turn. For my pick, I was gonna go with one of Big Black's albums, but I thought I'd let Marjorie have that one. Instead, I'll go with one that I'm pretty sure she's also a fan of from the same genre. Heroin Man by Cherubs. This one falls into a genre known as pig fuck. No, I'm not kidding. Is apparently a tribute to a friend of the band who died of a heroin overdose. What makes it disturbing, though, is the abrasive sound combined with the heroin-themed lyrics. It's clearly being used for shock value. Also, this album cover could easily be seen as being in poor taste.
Good choice, Dally. Post-hardcore may be my favorite genre, but pig fuck is one of my favorite subgenres of it. Also, thanks for thinking of me with the Big Black thing.
No problem.
For my pick, I'm going with one that is basically Black Sabbath on steroids, and also even more weed and cocaine than Ozzy Osbourne could ever hope to consume. That's right, it's Dope Throne by Electric Wizard. This album is disturbing because not only does it sound like a miserable, druggy haze, but it was also apparently recorded while all the members were dealing with addiction and various personal traumas. It shows with the lyrics being dark in a way that almost makes this feel like a death or black metal album. This is probably the most extreme stoner metal album to ever exist, mostly because, unlike some stoner metal albums, there's very little that's catchy about this. It's a difficult listen, especially with how slow and long these tracks are, but if you want music that's disturbing in a different way than most of what appears on this list, check it out. It has some great riffs.
I never would have thought of that album for this list, but now that you mention it, it makes sense. Great album, by the way, though you forgot to mention that those vocals sound like a tortured scream.
Good point. Thanks, Lauren.
You want disturbing? I'll give it to you. Black metal with elements of noise and dark ambient. Obscuritatem advoco amplactermi by Abruptum. I'm a black metal fan. It takes a lot for a song to scare me. But the two 20-plus minute songs on this album are genuinely unsettling. The vocals sound less like vocals and more like noise. The guitars are so distorted you can barely tell what they're supposed to be. And holy shit, the atmosphere of this thing is all kinds of twisted. I always say that nothing else sounds even a little bit like black metal. But even most black metal doesn't sound like this. This album and band are an anomaly in the best way possible.
Wow. That album sounds interesting. I'll check it out. Anyway, my pick is Too Dark Park by Skinny Puppy. These guys are part of a genre called electro-industrial, and are kind of an early pioneer of it. The vocals are downright evil sounding, and the mechanical synths and drum machines make this album feel like a soundtrack to a particularly off-kilter dystopian movie. If you're a fan of bands like Rammstein, Marilyn Manson, or Nine Inch Nails, check this out to see where they got their inspiration from.
Damn, Greta has taste.
Thanks, Mindy.
I see you guys are women of culture too. Anyway, for my pick, I would go with Diamanda Galas again. But for the sake of not sounding like a broken record, I'll go with Street Cleaner by Godflesh. This is what industrial metal should sound like. Not Marilyn Manson or Rob Zombie or any of that faux edgelord shit, but actually brutal like this. The sludgy riffs mixed with mechanical industrial elements and death growls make this a brutal listen. Don't get me wrong, I like Rob Zombie, but he doesn't capture the intensity of either of the genres he's trying to fuse. Godflesh does, and holy shit, this album is underrated.
Ilhan, I'll give you a big yes for industrial metal not being intense enough. Also, Godflesh is great.
Hell yeah.
Well, Corey, you stole my pick. I wanted to use that Crucifix Clan album for my pick, but since you took it, I'll instead go with the Prefix for Death by Necro. This guy is a horrorcore rapper who makes rap music with death metal lyrics. It's got some pretty catchy beats, but the lyrics are pure shock value. It's also detailed enough that a part of me wonders if Necro might secretly be a killer. Not really, but you know what I mean. Also, I can't be the only one who thinks this album cover looks like a death or thrash metal album cover. Makes sense, I guess, since this guy is a former death metal band member.
He's also the brother of another rapper named Ill Bill, who was also in that band.
Correct. Ill Bill is pretty disturbing too, especially that song on his first album that was written from the perspective of one of the Columbine killers.
Agreed.
Nothing like a dead pastor splattered all over concrete like plaster on Sabbath, a blasphemous disaster. I provide you with intricate, sadistic shit to guide you, but this to click and will divide you like arithmetic.
Pure shock value, huh? Sounds like a fun album. I'll have to check that one out. For me, I'll go with Rationing the Sacred Human Remains by Parasitic Ejaculation. You can't have a list of disturbing albums without at least one brutal or slam death metal album. And here it is. This is a slam death metal album that is brutal as fuck. The slams are insane, and the whole thing is ludicrously heavy. Lyrically, this thing reminds me a lot of Reek of Putrefaction by Carcass. It's just taking the gross side of medical terminology and making full use of it. Also, I know this will make me sound like a nerd, but the song Cerebral Vivisection reminds me more than a little bit of The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells.
Now you're making me want to listen to it. The Island of Dr. Moreau was my first book.
Mine is, once again, a recent discovery. My pick is Satan is Watching by Those Poor Bastards. In honor of Halloween and our recent videos, I've been getting more into the gothic side of alternative country. This is one of the bands I've discovered. The whole thing has a dark, nihilistic, borderline apocalyptic feel to it. The world is evil and Satan is watching with pleasure. Even our narrator feels like some kind of demonic harbinger of doom. Anyone who says country music can't be brutal needs to listen to this, and maybe 16 Horsepower and Jay Munley as well.
And the Coffin Shakers, and Angry Johnny and the Killbillies, and Pine Box Serenade.
Never heard of that last one. We'll check them out.
Great! Gothic country is the most underrated genre of all time.
I knew a man from round those parts. He had a kind of nervous heart. Some friends of mine tore him apart. I think he was my father. This world is so evil.
I like the name Angry Johnny and the Killbillies. However, my pick is Let It Enfold You by Senses Fail. I know some people are about to call me a poser, but think about it. This album has a song called Choke on This, which is about a guy who murders his ex-girlfriend after breaking into her house and sexually assaulting her. It also has Tie Her Down, which is about an abusive relationship from the perspective of the abuser. Not to mention You're Cute When You Scream, which is from the perspective of a stalker who murders a girl because he can't be with her. This is an emo album, which means it's supposed to be deeply personal and heartfelt. In other words, while I doubt Buddy Nielsen of Senses Fail would actually do the things described in these songs, just the fact that he feels any emotional relatability to this at all is pretty dark. Then there are songs like Irony of Dying on Your Birthday and Angela Baker and My Obsession with Fire that are pretty despicable even without the violence against women. Yeah, this album is a dark, twisted look into the mind of an emotionally disturbed person, and while Buddy seems to be doing better, this album is a great, not to mention disturbing, look into where he was as a person at the time.
Hey, someone else who gets how dark Let It Enfold You is. So many people think it's just another whiny emo album, but that album is about as pitch black as it gets lyrically.
That's why I like that album, despite not really liking the bands that blend emo pop and post-hardcore. It's the darkest album I've heard in that style. Good analysis, Johnny.
Thanks, guys.
I give you these roses now, but I left in the thorns. I'd rather hurt the one that hurt myself.
I agree that Johnny's analysis makes it sound pretty dark.
Unfortunately, the music is virtually indistinguishable from Thursday, Silverstein, Hawthorne Heights, from first to last, etc. The generic music ruins the disturbing factor for me. Anyway, my pick is First Utterance by Comus. This is a progressive and freak folk album with some extremely disturbing subject matter. The first song, Diana, for example, is about rape. It's beyond disturbing, not just because of the lyrics, but also because of the strange, off-kilter feel of the music. This song makes me feel like I'm being chased through the woods by an axe murderer. Or, for that matter, a rapist. The album doesn't stop being dark from there, and considering this came out in the early 70s, I admire it for pushing folk into weirder, more disturbing directions.
You're just not brooding enough to understand pop post-hardcore, Ken.
Archie, I listen to Rustin Kelly. Rustin Kelly makes Senses Fail sound like BTS.
I'm just messing with you. You're plenty brooding.
Oh.
Your real problem is that you need to get your ears checked.
Son of a bitch!
Go get him, Archie!
If you guys are done acting like children, it's my turn. For my pick, I'll go with When the Kite String Pops by Acid Bath. Even ignoring the fact that this album has John Wayne Gacy on the cover, which is pretty hard to ignore, this album is genuinely disturbing. It's nihilism in album form, with lyrics that explore the concept of death in various ways and remind us of our own mortality. The music itself is ugly sounding, which makes the genre label of sludge metal make sense. Even the song titles are a bit unhinged here. Finger Paintings of the Insane, The Bones of Baby Dolls, Cassie Eats Cockroaches. Wow, just wow.
God damn it, Laura, you stole my pick. I fucking love When the Kite String Pops by Acid Bath. Anyway, since Laura stole my pick, I'll go with Terrifier by Pig Destroyer. This album is, to make an obvious joke, terrifying. The lyrics are violent, but they somehow manage to be the least disturbing part of this. The first time I listened to this album, I legit jumped when that scream came at the end of the intro track. Then there are the actual songs on here, which are absolutely bestial. The vocalist sounds like a deranged madman screaming every atrocity he can think of. And the abrasive yet surprisingly complex instrumentation just adds to it. I hated this the first time I listened to it, but once I got over the shock, I realized that it's extremely well-crafted and a great album to let out aggression to.
Glad to see that we got some grindcore on this list. Good one, Lauren.
I knew you'd be happy.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you, Dally, for letting me have my pick, which is Atomizer by Big Black. This album is all kinds of sick and disgusting in a disturbingly realistic way. It talks about all sorts of dark topics, including pedophilia, racism, murder, mental illness, alcoholism, police brutality, etc. The band pulls no punches when talking about these topics, describing them in brutally realistic ways. The fact that it feels so real makes it hard to listen to, and the fact that half of the things mentioned in these songs exist makes me want to take an idea from that album cover and blow up the earth.
For my pick, I'll go with Sinner, Get Ready by Lingua Ignota. As someone who grew up in the Westboro Baptist Church, this album is disturbing on a deeply personal level for me. It's about religious trauma and portrays faith in an extremely dark light. It hits hard on that level, but I imagine it would also hit pretty hard because of the song I Who Bends the Tall Grasses. This song is about the domestic abuse Lingua Ignota suffered at the hands of her ex-boyfriend, the lead singer of the noise rock band Daughters. In it, she fantasizes about killing her abuser and letting God sort him out, and honestly, I can't blame her. The fact that Lingua Ignota always sounds so unhinged when she's singing makes this already dark album even more unsettling.
Hey, Jeanette, I think you and I might need to listen to that album.
Agreed. You should. It's powerful.
Always your voice bites the back of a cold wind.
Good pick, Megan with an A, but Megan with a Y here has one better. Deceit by This Heat. Hey, that rhymed. This is an extremely experimental post-punk album that makes Joy Division and The Cure look like Bryan Adams. It's weird. and the dark atmosphere combined with the unhinged vocals and propulsive percussion make the entire thing sound like it should be played at some demonic cult's ritual. I only discovered these guys recently, but I think they might be the most unique and the most frightening post-punk band ever. If you like post-punk and haven't heard these guys, check out this album and their self-titled, which is even more experimental.
As a post-punk fan who hasn't heard of this heat, I'm intrigued. You had me at sounds like it should be played at some demonic cult's ritual. Anyway, I'm the disturbing music person here, so this was hard for me. However, I'll do the same thing Steve did in our fall albums video and pick an EP. Befuddlement by Tantric Bile. This EP has 3 short songs, and they make this EP a combined 5 minutes and 25 seconds long. It's short, but it's also one of the most unique genre blends I've ever listened to. It combines gore noise, which itself is a fusion of noise and grindcore, with avant-garde jazz. Yeah, it's as batshit insane as it sounds. It's disturbing because it sounds like the soundtrack to someone falling down the stairs so hard that they die, and also because the music is absolutely nuts.
A noise album, huh? What a coincidence. I also have one. Mine is In Search of Death by A-Track's Morgue. Let's address the obvious first. This album is just as dark and abrasive as one would expect a death industrial album to be. What really makes this disturbing, though, is that the guy behind this project took his own life back in 2007 after years of being completely negative in interviews. He was severely depressed and clearly hated life. This album reflects that, both with its sound and with its title, In Search of Death. I don't get sad easily, but this album was pretty gut-wrenching to listen to knowing what happened to the guy behind it.
Wow, I don't think I'll be able to sleep tonight after this video.
You should have smoked some weed with me beforehand.
No thanks. If I'm going to be high, I'd rather not do it on camera. I had to do some searching for this one, because I'm not normally the disturbing music type. However, I did find one in my search that I found to be beautiful in a twisted kind of way. That would be Storm of the Light's Bane by Dissection. I remember Greta mentioned it in our last discussion, and wow, Greta has taste. This album sounds like the world's darkest Christmas album. The riffs make me picture snowflakes falling from the sky while I stand in snow up to my ankles. What makes it disturbing, though, is that the vocalist took his own life in the name of Satan. Seeing the satanic lyrics now makes this even darker than it would have been before that happened, because at the time I imagined a lot of people thought it was just for shock value. However, the fact that he believed so much in Satanism that he was willing to die for it makes it clear that he wasn't just trying to shock.
Wow. I never would have thought of Storm of the Light's Bane for this. But now that you've said all that, I see it.
Yeah, I'll still listen to this again in December, though.
Yes.
I'm with Miranda. I'm not really the disturbing music type either. However, if I had to pick one, it would be Sedition by Hour of Penance. If you're a death metal fan, this probably doesn't seem that disturbing. In fact, the anti-religious lyrics and sheer brutality of the music are probably pretty normal for you. If you're not into extreme music, though, this is pretty brutal. It's what I listen to when I'm in the mood for something really heavy. The riffs are fantastic, and the melodies are surprisingly solid for a brutal death metal album. Also, this album cover fucking slays.
Hell yeah, technical death metal. One of the few things Paris and I agree on musically.
Yeah, most of your taste sounds like noise to me.
Some of it is.
Touché.
I'll go with Earth AD Wolf's Blood by the Misfits. Spoiler alert for our upcoming Misfits ranking, but this album is good but overrated. It's enjoyably terrifying, but the melodies aren't as good as on albums like Walk Among Us and American Psycho. However, that does make the album more disturbing, because it lacks the catchiness of their other ones. It's about as pitch black as the horror punk genre gets, and while I love the campy side of horror punk, I wouldn't mind hearing more extremely disturbing stuff in this genre. Horror punk bands, get on that.
Pat, I am with you 100% on horror punk needing more stuff that is actually scary.
Hey, Vanna agrees with me. Thanks for the support, Vanna.
No problem, Pat. Anyway, it's Phileas's turn, meaning you two get to act like frat boys again.
Well, as my bro Pat said, no, just kidding.
What's next? Are you going to start yelling every time someone scores a goal while playing a sport?
Football and beers, my bro. And don't forget, all the hot slam pieces are at Gamma Phi. It's time to commence Operation Panty Raid.
That's the best thing I've ever heard. Not just because it's hilarious hearing you talk like a frat boy, but also because of that Cards Against Humanity reference.
You got the joke? Wonderful. Anyway, my favorite disturbing album is In Curso by Spawn of Possession. This is a symphonic death metal album with some beautiful yet scary instrumentation. What really makes it disturbing, however, are the two storytelling songs. One of them is called Apparition, which is about a Christian family who are visited by what they think is an angel, but it actually turns out to be a demon. The other one, The Evangelist, deals with child rape in the Catholic Church in a way that makes me feel like I'm watching a particularly dark episode of Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. It's as twisted as you can get, and the disturbing realism of it makes it extremely disturbing.
Wow, from dumb frat boy speak to the Queen's English in seconds. Dude, you're the Barack Obama of the UK.
I'll take that as a compliment.
My disturbing album is Geo Gotti by Boards of Canada. This is an IDM album, though I hate that term. And unlike Boards of Canada's first album, Music Has the Right to Children, which was more comforting, this album is absolutely infernal. It makes me feel like I'm walking through Dante's Inferno. Maybe it's the album cover, but I don't think it is. The song Gyroscope in particular sounds like it came straight from the depths of hell itself. Maybe that's why it was featured in the movie Sinister. I know Music Has the Right to Children is the most popular Boards of Canada album, but while it is great, Geo Gotti is my favorite album of theirs.
Geo Gotti fans, rise up!
For me, the most disturbing album is Musical Monkey by Guttermouth. It's disturbing because it's a punk album made by Republicans, and it's actually good. That is a sign that something is horribly wrong with the universe. Just kidding. My actual pick is Possessor by Ghost. This album is dark synth, though I'd forgive someone for thinking it's industrial with how heavy the percussion sounds. Most dark synth is a bit too campy for me to call it genuinely disturbing, but this album is an exception. Similar to what Ponyboy said about Geo Gotti, this album sounds like it came straight from hell. Unfortunately, Ghost would really start to suck after this album, but at least his last good album was his best.
Who says Republicans can't make good punk? Johnny Rotten likes Trump.
Yeah, Johnny Rotten is also one of the most overrated musicians in punk.
Are you guys trying to get us roasted in the comments?
I'm just saying they had no ideology other than shocking people.
Let's have Sarah go before this gets any worse. Sarah, go ahead.
For my pick, we can't have a disturbing albums list without someone mentioning these guys, can we? Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse. This is the album with the death metal masterpieces that are Hammer Smashed Face and I Come Blood. It's extremely dark, and the cover art and lyrics are NSFL. Also, there's a song on this album called Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt. Need I say more?
Hey, at least it's not called I'm Dragging a Dead Deer Up a Hill.
That's not nearly as disturbing as Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt.
Yes, it is. At least I can see why a death metal band would choose that name. Why would Grouper name their song I'm Dragging a Dead Deer Up a Hill?
Touché.
I'm like Miranda in Paris in that I'm not really a disturbing music type. However, I do enjoy the Slim Shady LP by Eminem. I know Eminem is seen as problematic nowadays, and I get why. However, I still think he used to be a pretty good rapper. This 1999 album from him proves it. His flows and rhyme schemes are insane, and songs like 97 Bonnie and Clyde and Guilty Conscience are intense. The beats are also great on here. It's a dark album, though a lot of the songs are surprisingly fun to sing along to. I especially love shouting, "Don't you want to grow up to be just like me?" every time I hear Role Model.
As someone who discovered hip-hop because of early Eminem, good choice, Soda Pop.
Now follow me and do exactly what you see. Don't you wanna grow up to be just like me? I slap women in each rooms, then OD. Now don't you wanna grow up to be just like me?
Yeah, good choice. I'll also go with a hip-hop album. My choice is FBI by the Dayton Family. These guys are from Flint, Michigan, and they make some truly dark rap songs. Sure, they're talking about standard old-school gangster rap topics, but they do it in a way that sounds downright menacing. Our main rapper, Shoestring, has a gruff, deep delivery that makes him sound like a proper gang leader. The beats are also surprisingly dark. Basically, these guys are super slept on, and that needs to change.
Good taste, Steve. I only know one song from these guys, but I'll check out the rest.
Awesome!
Another sticky move. Moving now, taking cocaine out your house.
Hear no evil, see no evil. Soda Pop, you stole my pick. I was gonna go with Eminem. Oh well, I guess I'll go with Going to Hell by the Pretty Reckless. Now I know what some people are about to say. That's not disturbing. You just don't like the naked woman on the cover. 1. Do you even know me? 2. This album is about vocalist Taylor Momsen being talked into doing bad stuff before eventually ending up in hell. At least, that's how I interpret it. The album begins with young Taylor Momsen being seduced by an older man who gets the former good Christian girl into drugs, sex, and even more deviant things, possibly even murder. By the end of the album, she's either in actual hell or she's trapped in the hell of her own mind. It may sound like a fun rock album, but after hearing Laura's thoughts on it, yeah, this is dark.
Yay! Glad I won somebody over with my views on this album.
I wouldn't call it disturbing per se, but I get the argument. It is a great album, though.
Okay, time for me to finish this off. For my pick, I'm going with Ross Chilagalat Silatet by Venetian Snares. This falls into a genre of electronic music called breakcore, though it also has elements of classical music. Beautiful violins and harps combine with heavy electronic drum beats to create an album that sounds like someone going to a fancy art gallery and having a psychotic episode while staring at a Rembrandt painting. It's pretty unique sounding, which I enjoy, even if I did possibly butcher the Hungarian title.
Damn, I was expecting some crust punk or black metal. Good change of pace though, Vana.
Thanks, Dally.
And with that, we are officially done with our third counterculture discussion. We hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to do all that YouTube algorithm stuff. I'm Laura Ingraham. These guys are Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachman, Ann Coulter, Megan Kelly, Marjorie Green, Lauren Boebert, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Presley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Paris Hilton, Alex Trebek, Pat Sajak, Vanna White, Ken Jennings, James Holzhauer, Brad Rutter, Anne Frank, Mindy McCready, Greta Thunberg, Ponyboy Curtis, Soda Pop Curtis, Derry Curtis, Steve Randall, 2-Bit Matthews, Dally Winston, Johnny Cade, Phileas Fogg, Megan Phelps Roper, Ellen Ripley, Jeanette McCurdy, Miranda Cosgrove, and Archie Bunker. And this is Team Counterculture signing off.